Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reeve Tuesday night, 7 p.m. weekly emotional awareness discussion with a live guest. Now, if anybody has been brave enough to sit and watch the original, very non-techie, very non-professional 28-day live challenge, whether you saw it in live, whether you're watching this live or on replay, I did a series of book reviews one night, and amongst them was one called Three New People. And this is very relevant tonight because I have with me the author of Three New People, Brian Miller. And I am just so excited to have you on the show tonight. Hi and welcome.
Kay, it's great to see you. It's always great to connect with
And I
you, and
think
I'm
we're
uh, I'm thrilled
frozen.
we're able to do something live.
Thank you. I think I've just closed my door and cut off my Wi-Fi. Right. I'm hoping I don't have any major Wi-Fi issues. If we do, I'll head back into the other room where I normally sit for the living room. So that could be a techie issue in the way. And we're still frozen. I'm going to head to the other room. So bear with me a sec. This is just not working tonight. Right. We are going to attempt to sit in here somewhere, and you're going to have me sitting on the sofa tonight. Right. Apologies to anybody who's wandered in and found me talking early like that. Let's try this. But I seem to be having some Wi-Fi issues, so I've headed back to the living room. Right. Start again. I might have to edit this and cut a piece off at the beginning tonight for the first time in history. So, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for tonight's live show. Now we've overcome the internet issue and I've moved back to the other room. I have with me tonight guest speaker Brian Miller. Hi, Brian, and welcome.
Kay, it's great to see you. It's great to be with you always. Yeah.
Thank you. And do you know what? I'm so excited to have you on the show because, I say, for anybody who was brave enough to watch all of the 28-night live discussions I did in November, December, when at 2 nights' notice I decided to do the 28-night live challenge, there was one evening where I didn't have a guest speaker and I did 6 book reviews, one every minute, one every 10 minutes. So 6, that was my hour. And amongst that pile up of books was one called Three New People, which is a best-selling book. And you are the author of that book. So tell us where that came from, a little bit of an introduction to you and how you came around to Three New People.
Sure. So I actually came to Three New People out of my failed math degree. Well, I guess I didn't fail my math degree. I got it. I just never used it. So I finally had an excuse to use it. And basically where Three New People came from, so the subtitle of the book is How to Make the Most of Your Daily Interactions and Stop Missing Amazing Opportunities. So it's a book about the human connection revolution. And it's interesting because I had no idea that like human connection as like a phrase or a hashtag was going to become so popular, or I probably would have done more branding with it at the time. But I was talking about human connection before that kind of caught on, and so what the book is about is there was a study somewhere, and I think it was a very informal study. So this is not hard science, and I said that in the intro to the book. But there was a study somewhere that said over the course of a lifetime, on average, the average person meets 80,000 people, meets and interacts with 80,000 people. Now, that's a lot of people. That blows most of our minds. And what I did was I worked that backwards. I went, okay, well, there's 80,000 people I'm going to meet and interact with over the course of a lifetime. And if I take, this is my math degree, if I take the average lifespan of the average person and I divide that, and now I get how many people per year, and I divide that by 365, what you get is an average of 3 new people per day, that you meet an average of 3 new people every day of your life. And that blows people's minds, and it seems too high. The first time I tell people that, I can always feel people going, that's too high. You know what I mean? And when you really think about it, now you have to go back to pre-COVID. This is a little bit different right now, but go back to pre-COVID and you realize, you know, you met somebody standing in line at Starbucks to get your morning cup of coffee. You bumped into somebody in the elevator on the way to work, and then you had a conversation with a new hire, and oh, that's it, 3 new people by 9 a.m. You know, you meet more new people than you realize, and I would venture even virtually. It's just a little bit different here. And so what the book was about was making the most of those daily interactions. What are you going to do with those 3 new people every day? Like, this is an opportunity to do something amazing. So that's what the book was about.
Wow, that's incredible. And like you said, 80,000 sounds unbelievable, but breaking it down, yeah,
Yeah,
that's quite surprising. Well, like you say, this year has definitely shifted the balance. Um,
sure.
all being in lockdown, not meeting, but like you
Sure.
said, we're making up for it virtually. And for
Yeah.
example, like I did my 28 night live challenge, and I think some of them were new speakers, some not, but with 25 speakers over 28 nights, it's amazing how quickly you can bring new people into your life and make some
That
amazing connections.
That is my favorite thing about the virtual space is right at the beginning of lockdowns almost a year ago now, so many
Mm,
people were really worried that human connection was dead in the water, that we
yeah.
can't make connections with anybody anymore. And it couldn't
Mm,
be further from the truth. The difference is that virtually we have to be intentional about connecting with people, whereas in the real world, in the in-person
yeah.
world, we bump into people incidentally.
Yeah.
Incidental bumping into people doesn't happen online because you have to choose, you have to click, you have to decide where to be. People don't just wander into your space, right? Because we have all
Mm,
virtually we have all these bubbles and privacy and walls up. So you have to choose to reach out to people. But I was doing a whole bunch of programs over the last year. I've done 70 or 80 workshops for a lot of higher education, college students, grad students, young professionals, and they were really struggling to have a social life in college that they wanted to have. They were struggling to build career opportunities and do networking. And what I kept saying to them is, you don't understand how big the opportunity is right now to connect with people that you could have never connected to in the real world, because all
yeah.
those people, the hiring managers at your dream job, the executives, the leaders, the celebrities, they're all sitting at home stuck just like the rest of us. They are
Yeah.
open, they're accessible. You can reach those people right now. People were dying to connect with somebody. So the opportunity for the
Yeah.
last year has been extraordinary for human connection.
Has absolutely. And talking about connections, I just want to say hi to a few guests. I've got some people pop in. We've got Dawn, she's popped in, said hi, Kay, thanks for the invite. And we have Karen, who is calling in from Australia at 6:30 in the morning there. So hi, Karen. It's so lovely. Nice to see you've got
Hello,
out of bed this
Karen.
morning just for us. Wow. And we have Yvette, and Yvette is the very brave lady who has sit and watched every single one of my live shows. And I think this is the 41st one now. So well done, Yvette. Great to still have you on the
Unbelievable.
journey. And oh, we got
Unbelievable.
Sarah Jefford popped in as well. Hi, Sarah. So yeah, lovely to see everybody. Anybody wants to say hello, pop something in the text, and you're welcome to ask questions during the evening, and we'll pop them up if and when we can. But yes, so going back to even pre-COVID, even before you wrote your book, Three New People, we had already connected through the world of TEDx.
Yes.
And t so let me even go back before that, because before we introduce people to your TEDx, we were talking briefly before we came on that your original career, and this is amazing where you've come from, your original career was a magician. And it still is, obviously, not original, but you still are. So tell us about what drew you into magic. Let's start at the beginning.
All the way at the beginning. Okay, goodness. I'll try to make it short because I worry that people aren't as interested in my origin story as I might in my head think they are. So here's the real quick bit. So yes, I was a full-time magician for 10 years. I was a corporate and high-end event entertainer, got to travel the world. It was really pretty cool. I started out doing little backyard barbecues when I was a teenager for 20 bucks or 40 bucks, little restaurants, and did manage to one gig at a time, one person at a time, build my career up to internet. Well, mostly national traveling. TED is really what turned me into an international name. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I really enjoyed. I mean, I grew up loving magic. My dad, my grandfather, they were obsessed with magic. They never did it
Mm,
professionally, but they were magic enthusiasts, and so I was around magic all my life. And you know, I I have a very typical story among magicians. Now, that may not be a story most people have heard, but for magicians, this is a very standard story, which is that I was really I had a debilitating social and speech anxiety as a kid, which is something that nobody would believe now, having for 15, 16 years been in front of live audiences for a living. But I couldn't talk. I couldn't in public. I couldn't meet new people. I had almost no friends at any given time, and the friends I had were fleeting. When I was in, I don't know, fifth or sixth grade, I tried to give a book report and basically blacked out, woke up in the nurse's office because I was so nervous. And that does not make you a target for kindness when you're in middle school. I was bullied kind of like right out of a Disney Channel original movie. So I really, having said all that, I had a wonderful family childhood. I don't come from
Mm.
tragic story, but in my own way, I had a difficult go of it as a kid. And so what happened for me was magic ended up being the catalyst that completely transformed my life. When I was about, I don't know, in ninth grade, I had this magic trick, this card trick I was so excited about. And up until that point, in my entire life, I had never done a magic trick for anybody else because even though I loved magic, I was too afraid to talk to anybody. I was too afraid to stand up in front of anybody. And the problem with that, Kay, is I don't know if you do anything artistic, and I get the sense you do, even if just for fun, but
Sometimes.
almost anything artistic that you do, you can do for your own enjoyment. You see these guitars back here. I can play guitar for hours. Nobody else has to hear it. I can thoroughly
Mm.
enjoy it for myself. I can
Yeah.
draw, even if I don't draw well, and enjoy it for myself. The problem with magic is magic requires an audience because I know the secret. Can't fool myself with magic. You actually
Mm.
have to have an audience for magic to be enjoyable. And so it's a very hollow experience just doing magic for yourself, which I had done all my life. So
Mm.
to cap off this story, in ninth grade, I'm sitting at a lunchroom table, not with the other kids. I was just sitting there alone, and there were also other kids at the same table. And I was so excited with this card trick for the last few weeks I'd been working on. For some reason, I was just overcome, and I said, "Do you guys want to see a magic trick?" I have no idea why or how. And they're like, okay. Like I didn't even know them. And I was shaking with the cards, barely
Oh,
keeping them in my hand. But I did this trick, barely got through it, but their jaws dropped and they started slamming the table and, oh my, hey, come over, see this, check this. And literally in an instant, I
wow.
was popular. I had a personality. I was someone worth paying attention to. And through magic, I kind of using magic as a crutch and as a wall, I learned self-confidence. I learned social skills. I learned to
Mm.
value my own worth. And so in many ways, magic saved my life. I mean,
Wow.
it completely transformed everything. And so I owe everything to magic, even though I don't do nearly as much magic today in this new career as I used to. So that
Yeah.
hopefully that gives you the context.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, for your view, the magic of it was about what it did for you, not what you saw in perspective of other people. And that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I've talked on so many of these shows with people about finding happiness by doing things with a purpose or on purpose. And you have to move towards something that makes you happy. You can't sit here and expect the anger and the sadness to go on the way on their own. You have to drive yourself towards that emotion of happiness. Like the little
Yeah.
cycle I have up here. I talk about people. Gravity's heavy. It's easy to sink into the black, but you have to fight up to that yellow. And so, yeah, for you doing that was like other people, it could be sitting at crochet, going fishing, playing golf, whatever they do, whatever hobby, drawing. Um, for me, I found out the one thing I love more than anything is talking, which is a bit obvious, but again, that was when I found myself last year faced with the complete anxiety of all the my life changes last year. I won't go into them now. And then suddenly being faced with lockdown, living on my own for the first time, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for 28 days on my own? It's like I can talk. And that was my do something on purpose, was starting this live show. So it is about that is amazing how it's so inspiring to people, the different ways that you can go about doing something on purpose. And magic is an incredible way to do it. And then build
Yeah.
a career on the back of it. Wow.
Yeah, and that's so interesting that you threw that in almost as an afterthought. Oh, and build a career on the back of it. And and
Mm,
and I really like that you threw that in as an afterthought because I get really worried that stories like mine have convinced young people, teenagers today, that they are
mm,
supposed to do what they love for a living. And
yeah.
they are not it's not necessarily a good idea. I got
Mm,
very lucky, but I'm going to put this out as a word of caution. While I love magic, from by the time I was 5, 6 years into my full-time career as a magician, I started to hate magic. I really did. And it's because what being a magician for a living is running a business, and magic
yeah.
comes secondary. Because if you're going to
Mm,
make a living, you got to pay the bills. What happens is when you turn your passion into a profession, it becomes something you have to do as opposed to something you get to do. And I started to
yeah.
really hate not magic, but having to do magic. And so
Mm,
I do caution people, while it's wonderful to be able to do what you love for a living, it is much easier to love what you do than it is to go find a way to make a living with what you love. Like whatever you do for a living,
mm,
you can choose to love that thing and then do your passion
yeah.
on the side. If you want to make your passion a profession, great. It's just important, I think, for young people to know, maybe even not just young people, for anybody today to know, that there are compromises that come with making a living doing what you love. So,
Yes. So if you don't want to be going through all that hassle of running the business with it, keep it as a hobby. Whether it's like
yeah,
a lot of youngsters will play the guitar or music, or they'll draw.
yeah,
The sort of two of the key ones, artwork and music. But so many other things out there, whether it's modeling and gaming, but doing it because you love
yeah,
it, not because it's an escape, is the other one as well, isn't it? Got to be
yeah,
careful about things that can be picked up as a habit and things that are done because there's something you're passionate about. I mean, like
yeah.
gaming side of it can become a little bit of a habit and a negative one. Others do it as a passion and they do like that video gaming and they share it. So whatever they choose for youngsters, about finding the right feeling in your heart, in your head, you've got to really feel it. But
And it's
so,
it's more to that point though, real quick, Kay. I think
mm,
it's more likely that you'll end up being able to make a living with it if you pursue it just because you love it and you don't have the pressure of
mm,
having to make it your living. And that's partly how I got lucky, as I say, which is that I started doing magic when for money professionally when I was only 16. I didn't need the income to rely on it when I was 16. I just did it outside of school. And then I did it to support myself through college. But I didn't have adult bills and adult responsibilities yet. And
mm,
because I did that and I grew it, by the time I graduated college and I chose to just full time be a magician, I had built enough that I was able to just keep going. But for many people, they're trying it from scratch and thinking, well, I'm not going to have a 9 to 5. I'm just going to make YouTube videos and try to make enough money just making YouTube videos because I love making
mm,
YouTube videos. That is very, very stressful. If you love making YouTube videos, go work at McDonald's, do something mindless. Very difficult, by the way. I worked at McDonald's when I was 16.
yeah.
Very difficult. But do something mindless all day so that you can do your passion at night. And then
Mm.
maybe eventually you realize it's taking off, it's doing so well, and then you can think about how to make the shift. But yeah, that's all. I would just caution about that.
Mm. No, no, absolutely spot on. And like you said, sometimes that's a good point, actually. If there is something you're passionate about and want to keep learning and training up for, having that mindless work beside it is not taking your emotional energy away from what you're learning.
That's right.
And I did that because I wanted to learn photography, but I ended up working in a factory while I was studying photography, but I ended up not taking it into a career. And I ended up going into sort of the office and then parenting route after that and
Sure.
home educating my children. So that took me well away from a career and then eventually had to jump back in. So I've been all over the place, but had loads of, like you said, the mindless jobs. I think the
Yeah.
worst, I've never said this on screen, but the most mindless job I have ever had was shelling whelks. 6 hours,
Uh,
8 hours a day. That was
you're
just
gonna
like,
have to. I am an idiot American. I don't know what any of those words mean. Can you explain that for me real quick?
right, a whelk is a small seashell. and you had a pin in the other hand, and you stuck it in, pulled it out the shell, and put the whelk in one and the shell in the other, and just did that for 8 hours a day. That's mindless.
Oh,
And it,
that just makes me think of the I'm sure you just went through this with your book, the
yeah,
process of doing all the pre-sales when your book comes out and packing them all up. And I had this assembly line on the floor of the house, previous house with my wife,
you
and we were
thought
just
that many
and
yet.
I loved that so many people had pre-bought my book and wanted all the bonuses, but when I had not thought about how mindless it was going to be to go through that mailing
You got
process.
it. You got it. Yeah. Now, I must admit, mine haven't extended beyond the end of my desk yet, because
Yeah,
I haven't had the career behind it, and I'm starting from, like you said, I'm starting from scratch with my business,
sure.
whereas you built up and then did the book on the back of it. So actually,
Yeah.
this brings us through nicely because we talked about. You started off by saying about the book, which I did the review of during the 28-day challenge. And then you're doing the magic work. And then we mentioned TEDx, but we didn't come to that yet. And that was how we connected, because the first time I ever discovered anything about the name Brian Miller and magic in the same words online was when I found your TEDx talk on YouTube. And the funny thing is, I shared it with my son because he was going through a lot of depression at the time. And when we put it on, both myself, my son, and my daughter all looked at the video of you and went, "Oh my God, it looks like Matthew," my son. And you do look like my son Matthew. Not absolute doppelganger, but at the time with your TEDx, you had your what we call a trilby hat, or fedora, I think we
Fedora,
call it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we call it trilby hat here. And the jacket you had on, and your whole dress style, and the
Mm.
particular what he calls door knocker. It's like the one where you can get hold of it and go knock knock. He calls it door
Yes,
knocker.
yes.
And
The full
it just looks just
scruff
like him.
is new as of COVID. Once COVID hit, I just
Yeah,
let the full scruff come in and went forget about it. But yes, I used to
yeah.
meticulously keep this thing. Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah,
was a lot of
that's
work.
the one he's got. He calls it his door knocker.
That's funny.
Anyway,
That's funny.
yeah, so we all watched that, and we watched it several times over, and we really connected with your concept that you were talking about understand before being understood. And
Mm,
again, the Stephen Covey's book Seven Habits of Highly Successful
yeah,
People, I have referenced a number of times throughout the shows.
yeah.
And it was also something, this is quite interesting, where I wanted to reference it during my TEDx talk, but I didn't want to spend an extra 10 minutes talking about it. So I just simply said, and Brian Miller's already done an amazing TEDx talk on this subject, and just put your picture on the screen to say, go and watch that one. Um, so that was how we connected, because I reached out to you on Twitter and said, can I use your photo and reference your talk in mine? And that was just over about 4 years ago. So
Mm,
that's how we connected even 4 years ago. And we've stayed on touch in LinkedIn, haven't we?
yeah.
But until just over a week ago, we'd never actually spoken,
No.
but we'd stayed in touch. And that's amazing about the power of human connection, is that
Yeah.
you can feel connected to somebody even if you haven't spoken. That the internet's really good like that. And
That's
yeah.
such. I just love that you brought that up because I just recently, last month maybe, wrote a blog about that idea that I think I called it it was called Connection from Afar or something like that, and that it's so easy to
Yeah.
forget that there's so many different ways to connect with somebody, that of course you can be connected with your mom or your best friend or your
Mm.
spouse, and that's its own thing, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean other forms of connection are lesser. They're just different. And for example, I wept when Eddie Van Halen died a few months ago.
Okay.
The legendary guitarist, one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Van Halen. And when he died, and it was kind of unexpected, he was such a profound influence on my entire life, and I've loved his music, and it
Mm.
was such a part of my life that I was so connected with Eddie Van Halen. And we've never met in person. He doesn't know who I am. He never knew who I was. But what's interesting is that there's so many people like me around the world who've been so impacted by his music, and so he gets connection from us because he was making art and he was sharing his art, and the adoration he got from us, the global fan base, was how he connected with us. And so there's a different level of connection. And so I remind people that, if you write a blog, if you do a weekly live stream, if you, do anything like this, and even if you never hear from those people, and you'll probably never will, right? For every 1,000 people who read my blog, maybe 2 or 3 of them write and tell me what a great episode or what a great blog it was or whatever. You're not going to hear from most of the people you impact in life. You're not, but you have to keep reminding yourself when you don't get that addictive feedback that we want so badly, that you're still making an impact, and recognize that you're making an impact whether you realize it or not. So you may as well make a good one, right?
Okay, absolutely, and I'm not really sure how to follow that one.
Sorry, I didn't really give you anywhere else to go. That was a TED Talk. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I was going to say, although I've got to say, pretty guilty. I know the name Eddie Van Halen, but I don't actually know who he is. I don't know his music because I've not followed that arena of music. But then there's probably other people I know that other people have never heard of.
Sure, so, and you can think of a famous person or a celebrity that you felt really truly affected by when they passed, even though you'd never met them before. There was a comedian, George Carlin. When he died, I remember being just gut wrenched by that, and so I just find it interesting that a celebrity that you have no actual connection to, you can feel completely connected with because of their work or their art or their words.
Yeah, that's right. We did say about connecting with people, and even though it's just through words. And actually, Karen Haberman, who's watching tonight, she's a perfect example, bless her, because we've both just done a 28-day vlog challenge in a social media group to challenge ourselves on doing the sort of minute to 2 minute a day sort of story process about your business build up. And we watch each other's videos and comment, but we've never ever had a conversation. And yet she's here tonight watching, so I'm really, really grateful. Thank you, Karen. But yeah, we've been bantering backwards and forwards, and it's quite funny. But yeah, that's amazing how you connect with people like that. And just keep doing it, because even when you think, like you say, you think, oh my God, I'm doing a terrible job, someone else is going, wow, that's amazing. And I did warn you, I will stumble a few times because I'm not the perfect.
No. It's a really wonderful point. And yeah, I'm a
perfect example. Yes, Karen, you are.
Well, look at that. That was one too many ha's in there, by the way, Karen, just for what it's worth. That was one too many. I see Ralph also said Michael Jackson, I assume is what M. Jackson means, which is I think probably an example of probably an example of somebody who's
as well, and Ralph,
with.
So nice to see people watching in. It's lovely. So still coming around. So then did the TEDx talk, but why I was so inspired by your TEDx talk? Well, your TEDx talk just was inspiring, and like you said, even if people never write to you, the easiest way to tell that yours was inspiring people at the start of virtual band. That's trying to be ideal.
Sorry, I saw that you were saying something very serious, but I saw that comment pop up and I just had to laugh. You have the keyboards there. I got the guitars.
And Karen's now trying to learn the keyboard as well. But I learned to play when I was about 7 or 8, and then we moved and I stopped having lessons. So very rusty. I put it on yesterday and it was like, I can't remember what to play. That was it. I need to start from scratch again.
But you can do that for yourself and enjoy it.
Exactly, yeah. But I think that for me is one of those things that the passion's gone long way ago. Then my passion's moved on to other things, but it's there. And I introduced my grandchildren to the keyboard today. It's the first time they'd ever had a go on one, and they loved it. So So your TEDx talk, we know that's inspirational because it's had 3.3 million views, and people do not share something they're not inspired by. They just put thumbs down if they're not inspired, but yours got just shared around the globe. And it's an amazing talk. I really am. And that's quite an emotional journey in itself, isn't it? So you went from, like you say, being this very nervous, anxious teenager who's struggled to speak or connect with people to being a magician, a TEDx speaker with which I think 4 years ago at the time it was in the top 10, um, top
It
10
was
TEDx
way
speakers.
up there for a little while. It was in like the
Yeah,
1/1000th of the most popular TEDx talks of all time. It
yeah.
was quite a journey. It's as close as I'll ever come to fame or anything. It was pretty wild for a little bit there. Yeah,
I can imagine, yeah. Because I did have a quick look today, and there's some of them now up like 25 million. They've gone crazy
yeah,
now,
yeah.
way overtaken. And it's amazing because we we were saying before we came on about a saying which I think there's various versions of this flying around the internet, but you were referencing Jim Carrey in that it takes years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And you're saying about 10 years of magician work to become an overnight success in the TEDx speech. And I've been
Yeah.
on the other end of it because I did mine without anybody knowing who I am.
Yeah.
So then you get the other emotional journey of like all this build up to doing this big speech, and then it goes out there and goes, hmm. It's just
That's
like
right.
happens. So yeah. So
Well,
tell us,
that
how did that feel for you going through the TEDx process?
it was yeah, it was totally nuts. Because first I had no expectations of it, and I really wish people understood how little expectations. Because people ask me all the time, they're like, "How do I make my YouTube video go viral? How do I make my TEDx talk go viral?" I'm like, if I knew the answer to that, I'd have 500 viral videos, not one. They'd all go
Mm.
viral. So there's a huge amount of synchronicity and luck in that. But I'll take you through the journey there, which was I got invited to it, much like you did, and it's very
Mm.
unusual, which is why, even though I do coach TEDx speakers now and I know how to take them through the process of getting accepted, easily the best way to get accepted is to have done all the connection building and to have this whole group of people around you at all times that just trust you and love you and believe in you, because then when there is an opportunity available, they'll think of you, and that's what happened to me. I
Mm.
I the craziest way that I got the TEDx talk in the craziest way, which was there was a local performing arts studio here in Connecticut in the U.S. where I live, and for years when I was in my early 20s, I had taught magic lessons out of the studio. So I moved to Connecticut, didn't know anybody, had no business, had no clients as a magician, was just starting over when I was like 22. And my first thought, and it turned out to be a good one, was if I teach magic lessons at a local performing arts studio or a popular performing arts studio, then I bet some of those kids' parents who can afford if they can afford private magic lessons, those parents are probably working at companies that might hire a magician for their holiday
Ah.
party or for their summer
Mm.
picnic or whatever. And I
Natural
and so that
progression.
was my long-term plan, and it worked really well. So I was teaching at this performing arts studio, and while I was there, the other teachers, the music instructors and the guitar instructors and the piano and vocal instructors and dance, they became my friends, my family, because I didn't know anybody. And so I was there teaching. They became my family. In fact, the studio coordinator, this woman, Casey, she became like one of my best friends in the world, and eventually years later would be a bridesmaid in our wedding, because her and
Oh.
my wife, ended up getting along so famously. So back up to 2015, there's this local high school English teacher who has his kids taking music lessons there at that studio. I'd been long gone from that studio. I had not been teaching there in years. But he's there. He's waiting for his kids to finish up their music lessons, and he's just chatting with the studio coordinator. And he says, "You know how I teach English at the high school?" And she said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I got a TEDx license for this year, so we're gonna put on an actual real TEDx conference at the high school right here." And she goes, "Wow, that's amazing." And he said, "But I need to find speakers. Do you know anybody who would be really awesome for something like that?" Having no idea, he was talking to like my best friend who was going on to be a bridesmaid in our wedding. And not only her, but also the owner of the studio who was standing nearby. The story as it was told to me was they both at the exact same time said Brian Miller. And
Wow.
that sounds like luck, but what it really was years and years of building deep relationships with people. Because even if they
Mm.
love you, they won't necessarily recommend you because they also have to put their name on the line, their reputation on the line. And so I wasn't
Yeah,
just, they didn't just
makes
love me
sense.
as a person, as a friend, but I was trustworthy and they believed in the work that I did, right? That's years
Yeah,
of building. So that's how I got invited
yeah.
to the TEDx conference. And then it was being held at a high school and it was being run by students. It was run by students, hosted by students, and the audience was 80 high school students. So
Wow.
let me assure you, I had no expectations for this talk. Like what I said to my manager as a magician, I had a manager and he's still the same guy I have today. I said, Scott, I'm hoping if we get like 5,000 views, maybe we could raise our rates as a magician. I said, if we get 10,000 views, I bet we could double our rates as a magician. That was the pipe dream. Maybe we could
10,000 views.
maybe we could go from charging $500 to $1,000 for a corporate magic show. That was the pipe
Wow.
dream. And what's amazing is it didn't look like it was going to happen. In the first 2 weeks, it only got 1,000 views, and then it stalled and
Mhm.
nothing. It just stalled at 1,000, and I went, okay, spent 3 months, 200 rehearsals, a lot of time, did my best, proud of the result, and on with my life, back to card tricks. That really is what
Mm.
happened. And to cut this a little bit shorter, my wife and I were at the airport, ready to fly out to visit my grandparents in West Palm Beach. And my wife, we're standing in line to board the plane, and she goes, "You didn't tell me your TEDx talk has 2,000 views." I said, "What?" And I looked down at it
Yeah.
on the phone, and it did. It had 2,000 views. By the time the
Wow.
plane landed 3 hours later, it had 4,000 views when we got off the plane and opened it up. There was no Wi-Fi on the planes back then, right? We get out, we
Yeah.
look at it, 4,000 views. By the end of that weekend with my grandparents, it had 10,000 views, and a month later, it had 100,000, and 2 months later, it had a
Wow.
million. And
Unbelievable.
it was the right message at the right time, told in just the right way, with just the quirky enough thumbnail, right? A fedora
Yeah.
wearing magician in a suit talking about connection. You got to click on that. I didn't plan
Yeah.
that. It's just what I was at the time, So
Yeah.
there was a huge element of luck with a lot of work, and the world conspired to help me put that
Mm.
message out there. So that was the journey. It was nuts.
Including the inspired part of meeting your audience gentleman who was blind. That was an
Yeah.
amazing story. So if anybody hasn't seen that, I did pop the link in below the event holder, but we'll pop it down in here afterwards as well. But yeah, well worth watching and still sharing. Because mine's complete opposite, but it's been 4 years down the row, and mine's now just hit the 12,000 mark this year. So mine's way behind. But I
That's
know that,
amazing. That's
yeah, I was gonna say,
amazing.
I thought I would be happy if I made 500 views in the first year and it made 1,000. So I thought that I was
That's
happy with that because
that
nobody knew me.
but
Yeah.
here's the best part about that is that what you talk about, all this emotional awareness and your whole circle and this whole framework, that's the
Mm,
point, right? Is that it's so easy to look at other people's talks and compare it to that, but they're playing their own
yeah,
game. They're over there, they got nothing to
absolutely.
do with you. Nothing
No.
whatsoever. And I am in the really fortunate situation now, the very cool situation, to coach TEDx speakers who go on and give their talks now. And I'm constantly telling them, I'm gonna coach you to give the right talk, not the talk with the
Mm,
most views, not the most popular talk, but the
no.
right talk. And
Yeah.
what's really important about that is I have a student who got 150,000 views, and yes, she was able to quit the 9 to 5 and build a successful consulting business off the back of it.
Oh,
But I
mm,
also have a speaker who only got 2,000 views, who was able to, like, double her prices and become the go-to expert in her business. I have somebody who got
mm.
10,000 views who transformed her 6-figure, very respectable business into a 7-figure, global
Wow.
monstrosity in less than 10 months off the back of it. And that was with 10,000 views. So it's
Yeah.
about the right talk with the right audience and knowing how
Mm.
to leverage your message to make the impact you want. The views are really not the point.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely not. And for me, one of the main parts was because I knew where I wanted to be going with the mission of talking about emotional awareness. I wanted to sort of almost have a way of saying, right, this is our backstory. This is the point where we say the struggle is over. This is life going forward. And I always get the wrong hand. This is what we've come up with, and we're going to be
Yeah.
sharing that with the world. At the time, the mission was to begin that in 2 weeks. not in 4 years. There was a few other curveballs in between, but we got there. But
Sure.
it was about planting my mission, sharing with the world there is hope. I'm very well aware that if people look at about how to magically connect with anyone versus tackling teenage depression, they're going to go for the magic. So it's, I was aware my title's not going to be a big capture, but like you said, it's about connecting with the right people. And that may not be many people, but the right people. But yours just absolutely blew me away when I watched it as well, because your speech was just there, spot on, all the way
Well,
through.
thank you. And part
Mm.
of that, what you just said about the title, though, is yeah, there's a big difference between different titles and also different. Where you said, would I watch the teenage depression one or the magically connect with anyone? And I don't think
Mm.
anybody's making that decision. I think that's the where it's so easy to fall into that. They're not looking at those two and
Mm.
going, I'll watch one or the other. They're completely different topics and completely different audiences.
Mm.
And the magic, if you will, of my title and my topic is that it's both incredibly niched and incredibly wide at the same time, and it's very
Yeah.
rare, right? Because on one hand, it's about meaningful connections, and there's not that many people who are searching for meaningful connections because everybody wants to be heard, but nobody wants to listen, right? Nobody wants to
Mm.
hear. So most people want to watch TED Talks like how to make people listen to me as opposed to how to be better at listening. But at the same time, it's incredibly niched, human connection. Almost nobody's searching for that. And it's incredibly wide because it's what everybody actually wants and actually needs. And it's very rare to have a
Mm.
topic like that. But to give you an
Yeah.
example, I only need 20 or 30 clients a year because I give speeches and do workshops and do some coaching. So 3.3 million people saw that in all the years since then with all those views. Maybe 200 of those people have hired me. And the question I
Well,
ask people when they say, well, I only have 12,000 views, I say, okay, if all 12,000 of those people tried to hire you today, could you take the work? No, you'd have more work for
no.
25 lifetimes. So you don't
Yeah.
need more,
No.
right? You don't need more.
No. No, absolutely not. But it's just more about sharing the message of hope, that there is a
Yeah.
way through that depression was my message then. Like, don't give up, do keep going. There is a way. And I did promise you that at some point I'm going to loop back during the show because you said about all stutters and loops. And there was a bit you said earlier about online versus when you incidentally meet people in the street and you brush
Yeah.
past people and you go, oh, hi, or oh, sorry, And there is this talk so much about how you can be standing in the middle of a crowded room and be one of the loneliest people going. And that's what's so amazing about shows like this, about the podcasts that you do, about the TEDx talks, about all the, like you said, the I can't think of the word now. I said I'd do that as well. Blogs that you do
Yes.
online, and about all this online connectivity is sometimes so much more meaningful than the people that we physically meet.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and to be able to inspire people around the world as well. So it's
Yeah.
not even just local. So yeah, sorry, I just remembered wanted to come back to that part from earlier. And yeah, so I'm just trying to think because I know you've got to get off in a little while for your other show. You've got another meeting, very busy man. But it's, when we're talking about connecting with people, um, because connecting with people is an emotional connection, whether it's positive or negative.
Yep.
And it's amazing to inspire people today about connecting on positive for positive on purpose. And this show is a great example, like we say, about having connected over the TEDx talk, how you've connected with your wife's friend, about how they've connected you with the TEDx uh, organizers. And I had a very similar thing. Somebody through a speaker group said to me, oh, Kay, I know your topics. People want to hear about that. Here's an application form. So I didn't even go looking for it. I just
Right.
found the application form like put in my inbox. And when I ignored it, they got on the phone and went, no, get on there and apply for it. So connecting with people on purpose is really, really powerful. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring this round to a question, but I've just gone blank.
Well, it sounded like what you were
I'm
leading
honest.
up
I just
to.
say it.
Yeah, it sounded like what you were leading up to was kind of a question about how to actually make those connections here virtually when we have to do it intentionally as opposed to when it happens by accident or incident. Was that where you were headed with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So making them connections on purpose. I was thinking more about, um, And emotional. So tell us about for you what that feels like emotionally in
Yeah.
terms of when you connect with people. What what's the most meaningful connections you make online? Let's start with that one. Sorry.
No, it's a great question. So let's
I
just
left
talk
all my
about what
notes in
human.
the other room. Sorry, I just I left all my notes in the other room when I rushed through for the Wi-Fi at the start.
This is great. This is a real conversation. I love having real conversations. There's too everything's too scripted online these days. I like this a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm
not this
really
one.
enjoying myself. So
Mm.
So let's talk about human connection itself. We've used that term a million times in 45 minutes and never defined it. And this is
Yeah,
where
that'd
I
be
have two degrees. I have a math degree I haven't used, and I have a philosophy degree that I've never used.
oh.
So yeah, that's right. I wanted to have no job and no life. College was fun. So wish that was a joke.
No, I'd love to pass
So
any maths exam, and I would love to do a philosophy degree. That's on my bucket list. But yeah, sorry that I
so
interrupted you again.
as a
Mhm.
philosopher, what you learn is definitions is everything. Semantics are everything. Sometimes people get into a disagreement. You see this all the time. People get into a disagreement, and at some point, someone throws their hands up and they go, it's just semantics. We're just debating semantics." And it's like, yeah, it's all semantics. That's the point. Semantics is the study of meaning. What words mean matters, really matters, because a lot of disagreements come not from actually disagreeing, but from using the same words in different ways, or the different words in same ways. So I like to be really
Yeah.
clear what we're talking about. So what is human connection? And my answer is, and this is the definition I give in Three New People, human connection is the ability, human connection is, let's put it this way. It's a mutually beneficial exchange of emotional data. That's the best way I can describe it. It's a little clinical. It's the
Mm.
mutually beneficial exchange of emotional data. So there's two components to that. Mutually beneficial. It's really important because that gets rid of abusive relationships and those sorts of things, right? So it's not a one way. If somebody's only ever taking from you, you're not having a connection, right? So
No.
that's different. But also, it's an exchange of emotional data. It's not simply, where is the party we're trying to get to, or, the kind of stuff, how much does that cup of coffee cost, right? So let's
Mhm.
use this example. You're in line at the coffee shop. I love my coffee, so we're going to use that example. You're in
Oh
line
yeah.
at the coffee,
Yeah.
and I miss coffee shops with COVID.
Yeah.
So you're in line at the coffee shop. Now, there's two ways to have an interaction with the person who's taking your order. You can have it transactionally, which is how 99% of the people interact 99% of the time. I'd say almost everybody, almost all the time, has transactions. So that would be, here's $3, you give me a cup of coffee. End of transaction, no relationship necessary, right? But my argument in the book and my argument in all my work today is it doesn't have to be that way just because that's our default mode. You can take a second, even as something as stupid, as seemingly stupid as saying to the person taking your order, as you give it to them, you can say, hey, it seems kind of busy in here today. How's it going for you?
Yeah.
You will watch that person light up, and it sounds so small, but what you've done is you've recognized that person as an individual with their
Mm.
own life, their own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, worries, concerns of their own, independent of the being an obstacle on the way to the coffee, right? That's how we treat those people. You're an obstacle on the way to coffee. We do that all the
Yeah.
time. But you say,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, it seems really busy in here today. How's it going for you? And that's a real moment. And it can take 8 seconds. They go, oh, thanks so much. It is pretty busy, but I'm having a good day. Even in 8 seconds, that's a real human
Mhm.
connection. You don't need 3 hours or 30 years. Like, you can connect with your grandmother. You can also connect in
Yeah.
8 seconds with the person taking your coffee. And I saw that Karen popped up, give a smile. It costs nothing. I
Mm.
love that. And my favorite way of describing this comes from Nicholas Epley, a researcher in Chicago. He says, almost nobody waves, but everybody waves back.
Ah, yes, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids are the best one for that, aren't they? Kids are
Yeah.
like I saw one of my granddaughters at the weekend and I met them out at a distance. But she was like, I saw somebody walk past and she goes, hiya. And they're like, oh, hello. And she's, I
That's
love
right.
your doggy. She goes, and that's it. Did you watch these guys in their 20s just like melt? because
Yeah.
somebody acknowledged them. And she might 3 years old, bless her. But
That's right.
we
That's
stop
right.
doing it as we grow up. But yeah.
Because we're too busy and
Yeah.
we're too worried about our own stuff. And you mentioned earlier you
Mm.
could be really lonely at a party, right? It's like there's nothing worse than feeling alone when you're surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And what people forget, what you forget all the time, is you think to yourself, man, I just wish somebody would come up and talk to me.
Yeah.
And what you have to realize in that moment is get out of your own head and realize there's a bunch of other people at that party thinking the exact same thing. They're going, God, I wish
Yeah.
somebody would just come up and talk to me. And so when you realize that, you can be the person who does it. You
Yeah.
can give the gift of human connection. Because I say this a lot, but in the age of loneliness, in the age of isolation, in the age of divisiveness, the most generous thing you can do is reach out.
That's amazing. And you know what? As our younger generations here are about to return to school from lockdown, it brings us right back to that first conversation about the school canteen. And they're going to be
Yeah.
going back there. So share this message with them out there that actually something I was thinking about the other day, and you explained it so well at the beginning about when you first did that magic trick. Nobody is going to see the real you until you can be the real you. And that's when you become popular, or people, how can somebody love you for yourself if you can't accept yourself for yourself? And that's another thing we talk about a lot, is about that self connection as well as the outward connection. So whatever you would like people to do to connect with you, or you would do with others, remember to do it for yourself as well. And that's a really important message for anybody out there who is now going to come out of lockdown and just suddenly face this whole world of real people again. Get out there and go, hiya, and just see what
That's
happens.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
this is for the way the media has been talking about coming out of lockdown, with the vaccines. Yay, it's great. We're all going to get back to normal life. I keep seeing that and going, I don't think the way the media is talking about it and the way people were talking about it, I don't think that we realize that this is really just the beginning. We've spent a year in isolation, and we're going to have to relearn as a society, how to engage with each other, how to connect with each other, we're going to have to remember the lessons we learned from the last year, because when we all went into lockdown a year ago, the same people who just the previous week had been complaining about their annoying coworkers would have done anything for one of those annoying coworkers to have a conversation with.
yeah.
And we have to remember that. We have to remember that as
Mm,
we re-enter normal life this year. It's going to be
yeah.
critical. We have a real potential to not undo all of the humanity that we learned in the last year. And I'm really worried that everyone's going to just kind of click and forget everything we just learned and just get back into the
Mm,
hustle bustle transactional lifestyle. So we
yeah.
can all
No,
do it, though. Like anybody who's watching or listening to this, you can lead the human connection revolution. You don't need to wait for someone like me.
no, amazing. Oh, yeah. Everybody can take part. And I've got to laugh here because, hi, Jan. Jan's watching in. And she said, Karen, example of what I feel, I'm trolling you. Sorry. You do have to go back and watch from earlier on, Jan, if you've come later on, because I can't even think what that was about now. Example of, we were talking about connecting with people around the globe and how Karen and I connected through the vlog. And Jan's another lady I've connected with through the same vlog challenge. But you'll have to go back
Too
and watch
funny.
it, Jan. You'll love it. It was quite funny. And
Watch the whole thing.
yeah.
This conversation was on fire. It's excellent. It was raw. It was real.
Well,
There were no notes.
no notes because I left them in the other room. Started the first, as we said, right, we'll get on early, be set up. No issues tonight, no techie issues. And the first thing I went on, you froze, because having moved my office to the back room, it's not picking up the internet enough. So I need to do something about moving my internet and my broadband now. So that's my next challenge. Yeah, mastering life is all about mastering change. That's my quote. And
I love
yes,
it. That's a great place to end. That's a great quote. I love it.
thank you. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have had you on the show tonight, Brian. It's, like you said, been a conversation on fire, and I feel like we could go for another hour, but I know you've got to go and do your next meeting, your next show, your next interview, whatever you have.
I have a live
Um,
stream of my own to run in just a few minutes. So.
oh, there you go. If you haven't had enough, follow along. But anyway, and also, like I said, we did connect. Although we'd connected 4 years ago, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, because you interviewed me on your podcast about
That's
pivotal
right.
moments, and that's going to be aired sometime in June. So if anybody's
Yes.
interested in hearing us having another conversation on the opposite direction, then yeah, keep an eye out in June. We'll let you know when that's released. And
That's right.
thank you so much indeed. But in the meantime, anybody can catch up with Brian on LinkedIn more than Facebook, because he's usually hanging out over there on the other
Yeah.
side, although I'm in bit in both. But yeah, thank you so much. And if there's any links you've got to, like you said, the TEDx links for anybody who's interested, and we'll put a link to your speech in there, your TEDx speech, and anything else you want to share, we'll pop them in the comments afterwards. It's a massive, massive thank you for giving us your time tonight to talk,
Appreciate
and
it.
really, really loved it. So we are
Oh,
heading
thanks
off
so
early
much.
tonight. Thank you so much, and we got masses of thank yous here. Fab K, night to you both. Thank you, Yvette. Thanks, that was excellent by everyone. Lots of smileys from Yvette, bless her.
I love
And
it.
thanks, Brian and Kay. I'm off to wave to random people today. So I told you, she makes me laugh, Karen does. Have fun with it. And don't forget
It's
to put the video on
that's
before you
the
do
that's the Zoom wave. Have you noticed? Is it just me that's noticed that we wave when we get off of Zoom calls, where we never used to wave
it.
when we walked away from a conversation in real life when we get a, but on Zoom before everybody leaves, people go like this. It's the funniest
Oh,
thing. Anyway,
yeah.
all right.
Just
Well,
like to
I am
again.
actually gonna head off right now. Kay, it was such a
Yeah,
pleasure to
with
connect with
an
you.
emotional state wave to say we're all happy.
We'll
Okay,
be in
well,
touch
thank you
soon, I'm
so much.
sure.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you to everybody. And we'll see you all again 7 p.m. next Tuesday. Take care. Night night.
Bye.
Oh, stick my finger in front of the camera. Good end.